The silence in space was broken by a weak signal coming from the edge of the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the human ship Meridian, drinking his morning coffee when the communication officer turned around with a worried look on his face. "Captain, we're getting a distress signal. It's bad, sir." Jake put down his coffee cup and walked over to the communication station. Lieutenant Amy Foster was already working to clean up the signal, her fingers moving quickly across the control panel. The static slowly cleared, and what they saw made everyone on the bridge stop what they were doing. On the main screen appeared a being unlike anything they had seen before. It looked like a person made of living crystal, with light flowing through its translucent body. The creature was clearly dying. Cracks ran through its crystalline form, and the light inside was growing dim. "To anyone who can hear this message," the being spoke in a voice like wind chimes, "my name is Luminara. I am an elder of the Zalari people. Our world is dying. Our cities are burning. Our children are being taken as slaves." The image switched to show scenes of horror. Massive ships shaped like black daggers hung in the sky above beautiful crystal cities. The cities were being torn apart by energy weapons, their glowing spires crumbling into dust. Creatures in dark armor moved through the streets, dragging Zalari people away in chains. "We are not warriors," Luminara continued. "We have never known war. We have never raised weapons against others. We believed that peace and kindness would protect us. We were wrong." Jake watched in growing anger as the footage showed more destruction. The attackers were clearly enjoying their work. They weren't just conquering the Zalari world. They were destroying it for fun. Children were separated from their parents. Elderly Zalari were left to die in the ruins of their homes. "These are the Korthek," Luminara said. "They came to our world 3 months ago. They said we must surrender or die. We tried to negotiate. We offered them our knowledge, our art, our friendship. They laughed at us. They said weak beings like us deserve to be slaves." The image returned to Luminara, who was now clearly struggling to speak. More cracks had appeared in her crystal body. "We sent messages to 17 different civilizations asking for help. None answered. Most said they could not risk war with the Korthik Empire. Others said we should have prepared better defenses. One species told us that the strong have the right to rule the weak." Jake felt his hands forming fists. Around him, his crew was watching with the same growing anger. Amy had tears in her eyes. Even the normally calm navigation officer, Lieutenant Paul Martinez, was gripping his console so hard his knuckles were white. "If anyone receives this message," Luminara continued, "please know that we tried to be good. We helped other species when they asked. We shared our healing crystals with the sick. We taught our children to love all living things. We never wanted to hurt anyone." The camera pulled back to show that Luminara was not alone. Behind her stood dozens of other Zalari, all showing the same cracks and dimming light. "They were all dying. We do not ask you to die for us," Luminara said. "We know that would be wrong. But if you have any mercy in your hearts, please remember us. Please remember that we tried to live in peace. Please remember that we loved our children and wanted them to grow up in a better galaxy." The transmission began to break up. Through the static, they could hear explosions in the background and the sound of Korthik soldiers shouting orders. "Our time is ending," Luminara whispered. "But maybe someone will hear this and know that we existed. Maybe someone will care that we are gone." The screen went dark. The bridge of the Meridian was completely silent for a long moment. Then Jake turned to his communication officer. "Amy, send that transmission directly to Earth Command. Priority Alpha." "Yes, sir," Amy replied, her voice shaking. Jake walked back to his chair and pressed the button for ship-wide communication. "This is the captain speaking. All department heads report to the conference room in 10 minutes. We have a situation." 2 hours later, Admiral Patricia Kane was sitting in her office on Earth, watching the Zalari transmission for the 3rd time. Her staff had already briefed her on what they knew about the Korthik Empire. It wasn't good news. "They control 12-star systems," reported Commander Ryan Brooks, the intelligence officer. They've been expanding for the past 10 years. Every species they encounter gets the same choice: surrender and become slaves, or be destroyed. How many ships do they have? Kane asked. Our best estimate is around 3,000 combat vessels plus support ships. They're well armed and experienced in warfare, Kane nodded grimly. And the Zalari? Completely peaceful, no military at all. They don't even have police forces. Their entire society is built around cooperation and helping others. Kane stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the sprawling city of New Geneva. Somewhere, out there, billions of humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that on the other side of the galaxy, an entire species was being wiped out simply because they were too kind to fight back. Ma'am, Brooks said quietly, I should mention that the Korthek Empire has been sending scouts into our space. They know we exist. Kane turned around. What are you saying? I'm saying that if we don't stop them now, we might be dealing with them at our own doorstep in a few years. The Korthak don't stop conquering, it's what they do. Kane thought about her own children. Safe in their schools on Earth, she thought about her husband, working in his garden, worried about nothing more serious than whether his tomatoes would ripen in time. She thought about the billions of humans across their colonies, living free lives because no one had ever tried to enslave them. Then she thought about Luminara, dying alone while her people were dragged away in chains. Get me the emergency council, Kane said. Full session. And Brooks? Yes, ma'am? Start putting together everything we know about Korthik military tactics. I have a feeling we're going to need it. 3 hours later, Kane stood before the emergency Council of Earth. The room was filled with representatives from every human world, all of them having watched the Zalari transmission. The debate had been fierce but short. The vote is unanimous, announced Council President Helen Carter. Operation Righteous Fury is authorized. Admiral Kane, you have full military authority to respond to this crisis as you see fit. Kane nodded. Thank you, I won't let you down. As the council members filed out, Kane remained standing at the podium. In her mind, she was already planning. Ships would need to be gathered. Soldiers would need to be prepared. Supplies would need to be loaded, but most importantly, the Korthik Empire was about to learn something they had never encountered before. They were about to learn what happened when you hurt innocent people and humans found out about it. They were about to learn what humanity looked like when it was truly angry. The news spread across human space like wildfire. Within hours of the Emergency Council's decision, every human world knew about the Zalari and what was happening to them. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. On Earth, crowds gathered in city squares holding signs that read, Save the Zalari and no more genocide. People who had never cared about politics before were calling their representatives, demanding action. Children drew pictures of crystal beings and left them at government buildings. Maria Santos, a factory worker on Mars, watched the Zalari transmission during her lunch break. When it ended, she stood up and walked to her supervisor's office. I want to volunteer, she said. Whatever the military needs, I'm ready. Her supervisor, Tom Bradley, looked up from his desk. Maria, you've got kids. You can't just... That's exactly why I have to, Maria interrupted. Those crystal people have kids too. Had kids? I can't just sit here and do nothing. Within 6 hours, every military recruitment office in human space had lines stretching around the block. The Mars shipyards, which normally built cargo vessels and passenger ships, announced they were converting to military production. The asteroid mining colonies sent a message to Earth Command offering their entire fleet of mining ships for military use. Admiral Kane stood in the main briefing room of Earth Command, looking at the numbers on the screen. In just 2 days, over 4 million humans had volunteered for military service. The industrial output of human civilization was being redirected toward war production. It's unprecedented, said General Marcus Stone, the man Kane had convinced to come out of retirement to lead the ground forces. Stone was 73 years old, with gray hair and scars from the border wars 20 years ago. He was also the most respected military mind in human space. The people are angry, Kane replied. They've seen what the Korthek do to peaceful species. They know it could happen to us next. Stone nodded. The question is, are we ready for this? The Korthak have been fighting wars for centuries. We've had maybe a dozen small conflicts since we left Earth. Kane turned to Dr. Lisa Shun, the xenobiologist who had been studying the Korthak for the past week. What have you learned about them? Dr. Chun pulled up her research on the main screen. They're fascinating from a scientific perspective, but terrifying from a military one. Their entire society is built around the idea that strength equals right. They literally cannot understand why anyone would fight for strangers. Explain, Stone said. In their culture, helping someone who isn't family is seen as weakness. They think kindness is a disease that makes species soft and easy to conquer. When they saw the Zilari trying to negotiate, they assumed it was because the Zilari were too weak to fight. Kane frowned. What about their military capabilities? They're good at what they do, but they're predictable. They always use the same tactics: overwhelming force, terror campaigns, and mass enslavement. They've never had to adapt because no one has ever fought back effectively. Until now, Stone said grimly. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Korthik Empire was dealing with its own problems. Emperor Vexthal sat on his throne of black metal, reading intelligence reports about the human response to the Zilari situation. His military advisor, General Krexter, stood beside him. These humans are mobilizing ships, Krexter reported. Our spies count perhaps 200 vessels gathering in their space. Vexthal laughed, a sound like grinding metal. 200 ships? We destroyed the Altarian Defense Force with twice that number, and they were experienced warriors. The humans are young, Krexter agreed. They only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They've never faced a real military power? Have they made any demands? Vexthal asked. None. They haven't even tried to contact us. Our embassy on their border world reports that human officials refuse to meet with them. Vexthal stood up from his throne. He was massive even by Korthak standards, with thick armor plates covering his body and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Then they're even more foolish than I thought. Send a message to their leaders. Tell them that the Zilari are our property now. If they interfere, we will treat them as we treated the Zilari. Back on Earth, the message from the Korthik Empire was delivered to Admiral Kane's office. She read it once, then deleted it without showing it to anyone else. Admiral, her aide, Lieutenant Kevin Murphy, asked. What was the message? Nothing important, Kane replied. Just more proof that we're doing the right thing. The human military buildup continued at an incredible pace. The secret shipyards that had been hidden in asteroid fields for decades were revealed, producing warships with technology that surprised even Kane. The civilian population was voluntarily rationing food and materials. To support the war effort, Dr. Chun had moved her research to the main command center, where she continued analyzing Korthik communications. They're completely underestimating us, she reported. They think we're just another weak species that will surrender after the first battle. Good, Kane said. Let them think that. General Stone was reviewing troop deployments when his communication device chimed. The message was from Colonel Beth Harper, one of his best field commanders. She was currently on the training world of Titan, preparing the new volunteer units. General, Harper's message read, you need to see this. The volunteers aren't just civilians with patriotic feelings. We've got engineers who are redesigning our weapon systems. We've got doctors who are developing new medical techniques. We've got farmers who are figuring out how to grow food in space. These people aren't just willing to fight. They're finding ways to fight better. Stone smiled for the first time in weeks. He had been worried about leading untrained civilians into battle against experienced Korthik warriors. But these weren't just civilians anymore. They were humans who had seen injustice and decided to do something about it. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Captain Jake Morrison, whose ship had first received the Zilari distress signal, had been conducting reconnaissance missions near Korthik space. His report made Kane's day. Admiral, Morrison's message said, the Korthik are pulling ships away from their border worlds. They're consolidating their forces around the Zalari system. They think we're going to attack there first. Kane called an emergency meeting of her command staff. Gentlemen and ladies, she said, we have an opportunity. The Korthik expect us to try to rescue the Zalari directly. They're prepared for that. What do you have in mind? Stone asked. Kane smiled. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it. Their slave processing facilities are lightly defended. We liberate their prisoners first, then we deal with their main force. Dr. Chun looked up from her research. That's actually brilliant. The Korthak can't conceive of anyone prioritizing the lives of strangers over military advantage. They'll never see it coming. 3 weeks after the Zalari distress signal, the first human expeditionary fleet was ready to depart. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of her flagship, the battleship Defiant, watching as ships continued to join the formation. The final count was staggering: -847 warships, 2,300 support vessels, and 2.8 million human soldiers, marines, and crew members. General Stone joined her on the bridge. Are you ready for this, Patricia? Kane looked out at the massive fleet assembled around them. Each ship represented thousands of humans who had voluntarily left their homes to fight for people they had never met. Each ship carried the hopes and anger of an entire species. The Korthik think we're just another weak civilization, Kane said. They think we'll surrender after the first battle. They think we don't have the stomach for real war. And if they're wrong? Stone asked. Kane turned to him with a cold smile. Then they're about to learn what happens when you hurt innocent people and humans find out about it. She pressed the communication button that would reach every ship in the fleet. This is Admiral Kane to all vessels. We are humanity's answer to those who prey on the weak. We are the shield that protects the innocent. Today, we show the galaxy what we stand for. The fleet began to move, thousands of ships turning toward the edge of human space. Behind them, Earth and all the human worlds watched and waited. Ahead of them, the Korthak Empire continued their brutal conquest. Unaware that their victims had found champions, the sleeping giant was awake, and it was very, very angry. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vexta system. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching as her sensors began mapping the system ahead. What they found was not what they expected. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Phillips, the sensor officer, we're detecting minimal defenses. Just a few patrol ships and some orbital platforms around the main world? Kane frowned. That's it? Intelligence said this was a major processing center. General Stone, who had joined Kane on the bridge, studied the tactical display. It's exactly what Dr. Chun predicted. They think we're going to attack the Zalari homeworld directly. They've moved most of their fleet there. On the main screen, Vexta Prime looked like a nightmare. The planet was covered in massive industrial complexes, with streams of cargo ships moving between the surface and orbital stations. Even from this distance, they could see the slave camps, huge geometric patterns of buildings surrounded by energy barriers. 40,000 life signs on the surface, Phillips reported. Multiple species, they're all in the detention areas. Kane felt her jaw tighten. 40,000 people, stolen from their homes and families, working as slaves while their captors got rich. How many Korthak ships? 12 combat vessels, maybe 30 support ships. Nothing we can't handle. Kane opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Kane. We are about to engage the enemy. Remember why we're here. Remember what they did to the Zalari? Remember that down on that planet are thousands of innocent people who think no one is coming to save them. The Korthak response came quickly. A harsh voice filled with static spoke in broken human language. Unknown ships, this is Commander Thekval of the Korthak 3rd Processing Fleet. You are in violation of Imperial space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Kane looked at her communication officer, Lieutenant Daniel Roberts. Open a channel. The channel. Open, Admiral. Kane's voice was calm and cold. This is Admiral Patricia Kane of the Human Defense Coalition. You are in violation of galactic law regarding the treatment of sentient beings. Release all prisoners immediately and prepare for unconditional surrender. There was a long pause. Then the Korthik commander began laughing, a sound like grinding metal. Humans? You are the soft ones we heard about. You will make good slaves when we are finished with you. Kane closed the channel and turned to her tactical officer. Target their lead ship, all batteries, fire when ready. The first volley from the human fleet lit up space. The Korthik had been expecting primitive weapons, maybe simple plasma cannons or missile systems. What they got instead was technology they had never seen before. Human particle beams punched through their shields like they weren't there. Their fighters, expecting slow-moving targets, found themselves facing ships that moved with impossible speed and accuracy, Commander Thekvils. Confident laughter turned to screams of panic as his flagship shields collapsed under the human barrage. How is this possible? Their weapons are more advanced than our intelligence indicated. His tactical officer, a younger Korthik named Vexka, was staring at his instruments in shock. Sir, their targeting systems are tracking our evasive maneuvers. They're predicting where we're going to be. Impossible. Vekval roared. No species has technology that advanced. On the Defiance Bridge, Kane watched the battle with grim satisfaction. The human fleet was performing exactly as planned. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, each one covering the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that the Korthik couldn't break through. Their formation is collapsing, reported Stone. Should we accept their surrender? Kane looked at the tactical display. 3 Korthik ships were already destroyed, and the rest were trying to retreat. Not yet. I want to send a message. Below on the planet's surface, the battle was being watched by thousands of prisoners. In Camp 7, a group of Zelari refugees pressed against the energy barriers of their prison, watching the lights in the sky. What is happening? Asked one of them, a young Zelari named Christos, whose crystal body was cracked and dim from months of slave labor. An older prisoner, a member of the Alterian species that had been conquered 2 years ago, squinted at the sky. Those aren't Korthik ship patterns. Someone else is attacking. But who would fight the Korthik? Christos asked. Everyone is afraid of them. I don't know, the Alterian replied. But whoever it is, they're winning. The space battle lasted exactly 4 hours and 23 minutes. When it was over, the Korthik Third Processing Fleet no longer existed. Commander Thekval's flagship had been disabled rather than destroyed, and he found himself facing something no Korthik had ever experienced. Captured by an enemy who didn't kill prisoners, Kane ordered the surviving Korthik crew to be taken aboard. Human ships. When Thekval was brought before her, he was still in shock. You could have killed us all, he said, his voice confused. Why did you not? Kane looked at him with cold eyes. Because we're not like you. We don't kill people. Who surrender? But don't mistake mercy for weakness. Your empire is about to learn the difference. While the space battle ended, the real work began on the planet's surface. Colonel Beth Harper led the first wave of landing forces, her ships touching down near the largest slave camp. The Korthik guards, already demoralized by the defeat of their fleet, offered little resistance. Harper's Marines moved through the camp with precision and care. They had trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared them for what they found. Thousands of beings from dozens of different species, all reduced to walking skeletons by months or years of forced labor. Medical teams to the front, Harper ordered. I want every prisoner checked and treated. One of her Marines, Sergeant Alex Martinez, was working to shut down the energy barriers when he heard a weak voice behind him. Are you real? Martinez turned to see a young Zelari looking at him with wonder. The crystal being was obviously sick, cracks running through his body, but his eyes were filled with hope. Yeah, we're real, Martinez said gently. What's your name? Christos, the Zelari replied. Are you here to save us? Martinez smiled. That's exactly why we're here. You're safe now. Christos stared at him in amazement. But we are strangers to you. Why would you fight for us? Martinez's answer would become legendary among the freed prisoners. That's what we do. That's what humans do. As the liberation of Vexta Prime continued, word of the human victory spread across the galaxy. The Korthic Empire had suffered its first major defeat in over a century, and the news shocked everyone. On the Korthek homeworld, Emperor Vexthal received the report from his trembling aide. "The third processing fleet is gone, my lord. The humans. They destroyed it completely." Vexthal's red eyes blazed with fury. "Impossible. Our intelligence said they were weak, peaceful creatures. The survivors report that human technology is far more advanced than we believed. Their ships moved faster than our sensors could track. Their weapons penetrated our shields like they were not there." For the first time in his long reign, Vexthal felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not fear of death, which he had faced many times in battle, but fear of the unknown. These humans were not behaving like any species he had ever encountered. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," he ordered. "Full mobilization. If these humans want a war, we will give them one they will never forget." But across the galaxy, other species were watching and learning. The Korthic Empire, which had seemed invincible for so long, had been defeated by a species most of them had never heard of. In the hidden councils of conquered worlds, whispers began to spread. "The humans came for people they had never met," one rebel leader said to his followers. "They crossed the galaxy to fight for strangers. Maybe we don't have to be slaves forever." Back on Vexta Prime, the liberation was complete. 40,000 prisoners from 17 different species had been freed. The human fleet had converted the Korthic industrial facilities into temporary hospitals and refugee centers. Admiral Kane stood in the main medical bay, watching as human doctors and medics worked alongside freed prisoners to treat the sick and wounded. Dr. Lisa Chen had been right. The humans were doing something the Korthic couldn't understand. They were fighting not for territory or resources, but for the simple principle that innocent people deserve to be free. "Admiral," General Stone approached her, "the refugees are asking what happens next. They want to know if we can really protect them from Korthic revenge." Kane looked out at the freed prisoners. Many of them were looking at her with the same expression she had seen on Christos's face: wonder and hope that someone had finally come to help them. "Tell them," she said, "that humanity keeps its promises. We came here to stop the Korthek, and we won't stop until every slave is free and every camp is empty." Stone nodded. "And if the Korthic bring their entire fleet against us?" Kane smiled grimly. "Then they'll learn what happens when you make humanity truly angry." As the human fleet prepared to move to the next target, a message was sent back to Earth. The first battle was won, but the war was just beginning. The Korthic Empire had awakened something they didn't understand, a species that would cross the galaxy to defend strangers, that would fight impossible odds for the simple principle that right was more important than might. The Korthic Empire's response to the defeat at Vexta Prime was swift and massive. Emperor Vexthal ordered the Third Battle Fleet to crush the human forces before they could liberate more slaves. 200 ships and 500,000 Korthak warriors began moving toward the Zelios system, where intelligence suggested the humans would strike next. General Krexter stood before the Emperor, confident in his battle plan. "My lord, we have gathered our finest ships and most experienced commanders. The humans may have surprised our processing fleet, but they cannot stand against the might of our main battle force." Vexthal's red eyes burned with anger. "Make sure of it, General. I want these humans crushed so completely that no other species will ever dare to challenge us again." "It will be done, my lord. Our ships are 3 times larger than theirs. Our weapons have been tested in 100 battles. These humans are still children playing with toys they do not understand." But 3 star systems away, Admiral Kane was not planning to meet the Korthek fleet in open battle. She had spent the past week studying their tactics and preparing a very different kind of welcome. "They think like conquerors," she explained to her command staff aboard the Defiant. "They're used to fighting desperate defenders who have nowhere to run. They've never faced an enemy who could choose when and where to fight." General Stone nodded approvingly. "The asteroid field around Zelios 3 will give us perfect cover. We can hit them from multiple directions while they're trying to navigate the debris. Dr. Chun had been analyzing Korthic communications intercepts. Their commanders are arguing among themselves, she reported. Some want to attack immediately, others want to wait for reinforcements. They're not used to facing an opponent who might actually win, Kane smiled coldly. Good. Confusion is our friend. Meanwhile, on the surface of Zelios Prime, the surviving Zelari watched the sky with fear and hope. The Korthak had left a small garrison to guard their prisoners, but most of their forces had been pulled away to fight the humans, Elder Luminara. Somehow, still alive despite her injuries, gathered the other survivors in the ruins of their greatest temple. The humans have come, she said, her crystal voice weak but determined. They heard our call and they came. But can they defeat the Korthak? Asked another elder. The enemy has so many ships, I do not know, Luminara replied. But I know. That they tried? No one has ever tried to help us before. Whatever happens, we will remember that someone cared. The third battle fleet arrived at the Zelios system expecting to find human ships lined up for battle. Instead, they found empty space and asteroids. Commander Vexka, the young Korthak who had survived the battle at Vexta Prime, tried to warn his superiors. Admiral Thokvar, the humans are not fighting the way we expected. They use hit-and-run tactics. They strike and disappear before we can respond. Admiral Thokvar, a massive Korthak with scars covering his armor, dismissed the warning, coward tactics. When we find them, we will crush them quickly. He ordered his fleet into the asteroid field, confident that his superior numbers would overwhelm any human force. It was exactly what Kane had been hoping for. The human fleet was spread throughout the asteroid field, each ship hidden behind chunks of rock and metal. When the Korthak ships entered the trap, Kane gave the signal. All units, execute Operation Hammer Strike. The attack came from everywhere at once. Human ships emerged from behind asteroids, firing as they moved. The Korthak found themselves caught in a crossfire with nowhere to run. Their large ships, designed for open space battles, were clumsy and slow in the asteroid field. Commander Nick Taylor, leading the human fighter wing, executed a maneuver that would become known as the Terran Swarm. His fighters attacked from multiple directions at once, using their superior speed to stay ahead of Korthak weapons while targeting the enemy ship's weak points. This is impossible! Admiral Thokvar roared as his flagship shook under human fire. How are they moving so fast? His tactical officer was staring at his displays in shock. Sir, they're using the asteroids as cover and launching points. They know exactly where we're going to be before we get there. On the planet's surface, Major Susan Walsh was leading the liberation of the main Zelari prison camp. Her Marines moved with precision, taking down Korthak guards while protecting the prisoners. The Korthak, demoralized by the space battle overhead, surrendered quickly. Walsh found Elder Luminara in the ruins of the temple, barely alive but still conscious. Ma'am, I'm Major Walsh of the Human Defense Coalition. We're here to get you. Out of this place, Luminara looked up at her with wonder. You are the ones who answered our call. Yes, ma'am. And we're not leaving until every one of your people is safe. Tears began flowing down Luminara's crystal face. How can we ever repay such kindness? Walsh smiled gently. You don't need to. Repay anything. This is what decent people do for each other. The space battle was turning into a disaster for the Korthak. Their tight formations, perfect for intimidating weaker enemies, made them easy targets for human weapons. Ship after ship fell to the coordinated human attack, but the turning point came when Staff Sergeant Tony Clark volunteered for a mission that everyone knew was suicide. The Korthak flagship shields were too strong for normal weapons to penetrate, but Clark had an idea. I can get close enough to plant charges on their shield generators, he told Major Walsh over the radio. But I won't be able to get out. Sergeant, there has to be another way, Walsh replied. Ma'am, with respect, there isn't time. That ship has the Emperor's son on board. If we can take it out, the rest of their fleet will fall apart. Clark's Small fighter craft was loaded with every explosive the humans could spare. He flew straight at the massive Korthik flagship, dodging defensive fire with skill that amazed even his own commanders. "This is for the Zalari," Clark said over the radio as he guided his ship into the enemy vessel's shield array. "And for everyone else you bastards have hurt?" The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. Prince Kexva, heir to the Korthak throne and commander of their most elite forces, died in the blast along with half his staff. The psychological effect on the Korthik fleet was immediate and devastating. "The prince is dead," came the panicked transmission from the flagships. "Wreckage. Prince Kexva is dead." Admiral Thokvar stared at the debris that had been his command ship in horror. The prince had been like a son to Emperor Vexthal. When the emperor learned of his death, the retribution would be terrible, and Thokvar would be the one to blame. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Full retreat." The surviving Korthak ships fled the system in complete disorder, leaving behind 60% of their fleet. The humans pursued, but Kane called off the chase after destroying a few more stragglers. "Let them run," she ordered. "Let them tell their emperor what happened here." General Stone joined her on the bridge as they watched the enemy flee. "They'll be back with even more ships," he warned. "I'm counting on it," Kane replied. "Each time they attack us, more species see that the Korthik can be beaten. Each time we win, more slaves realize they don't have to stay slaves." On Zelios Prime, the liberation was complete. Thousands of Zalari who had been given up for dead were found alive in hidden bunkers and caves. The human medical teams worked around the clock to treat their injuries and help them recover from months of torture. Elder Luminara, now under human medical care, was slowly recovering her strength. The cracks in her crystal body were healing, and the light inside her was growing brighter. "Major Walsh," she said when the human officer came to check on her, "I want to send a message to your people." "Of course, Elder. What would you like to say?" Luminara's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "Tell them that the Zalari will never forget what they have done for us. Tell them that they have shown the galaxy what true strength looks like. And tell them that if they ever need our help, they need only ask." Walsh smiled. "I'll make sure they get the message." As the human fleet prepared to move to the next system, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The news of the Korthak defeat was spreading faster than their ships could travel. On conquered worlds, slave populations were beginning to organize. In neutral systems, governments were starting to reconsider their policies of appeasement. The Altarian Underground, crushed 2 years ago when their homeworld fell, sent a coded message to the human fleet. "We are ready to fight again. Tell us where and when." Similar messages came from a dozen other conquered species. The humans had done more than win 2 battles. They had given hope to everyone who had given up fighting. Admiral Kane read the messages with growing satisfaction. "Dr. Chun was right," she told General Stone. "The Korthak built their empire on fear, but once people stop being afraid, the empire starts to crumble." "And the Emperor?" Stone asked. Kane looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, Emperor Vexthal was planning his revenge. The loss of his son would make him desperate and dangerous. "He'll come for us with everything he has," she said. "And when he does, we'll be ready for him." The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The Korthik Empire, which had seemed invincible for so long, was beginning to show cracks. And those cracks were spreading, carried by whispered rumors of a species called humans who fought for strangers and never abandoned their friends. Emperor Vexthal stood over the broken body of Admiral Thokvar, his red eyes burning with rage that made the very air seem to burn. The admiral had returned to the homeworld to report the death of Prince Kexva, and now he was paying the price for his failure. "My son is dead," Vexthal said, his voice like grinding metal. "My heir, the future of our empire, killed by these pathetic humans." General Krexter watched nervously as the Emperor's claws extended. He had seen Vexthal angry before, but never like this. The death of the prince had broken something inside the most powerful being in the galaxy. "My lord," Krexter said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiating with the humans." They have proven more capable than we expected. Vexthal turned on him with fury that could have melted steel. Negotiate? With the creatures who murdered my son? Never. I will see every human world burn before I speak one word of peace. The Emperor moved to the great window that looked out over Korthik Prime. Below him, millions of his subjects went about their daily lives, unaware that their ruler was planning something that would shake the galaxy. Send orders to all fleet? Commanders, Vexthal commanded. Begin the final protocol. If the humans want to save slaves, they can watch entire worlds die instead. Krexter felt ice form in his veins. The final protocol was the ultimate act of spite, the complete destruction of conquered worlds rather than lose them to enemies. It had never been used before, because no enemy had ever threatened the Empire seriously enough. My lord, the final protocol means killing billions of our own slaves. The economic damage alone would be, I do not care about economics. Vexthal roared, I care about making these humans suffer. Send the orders. Across the galaxy, Korthik commanders received their new instructions with shock and horror. Captain Dexamur, commanding the garrison on the slave world of Ultria Prime, read his orders 3 times before believing them. We are to execute all prisoners and destroy the primary cities, his aide reported. The Emperor wants the humans to know the cost of their interference. Dexamur had been a soldier for 30 years. He had conquered worlds and enslaved populations. Without question, but this was different. This was murder on a scale that would accomplish nothing except revenge. Sir? His aide asked. Your orders? Dexamur looked out at the slave camps below his command post. Millions of Alterians, Zalari, and other species worked in the factories and mines. They were prisoners, yes, but they were also valuable. Destroying them made no sense. I need time to think, he said finally. Meanwhile, human intelligence had intercepted the final protocol orders. Dr. Lisa Chun brought the translation to Admiral Kane's attention, her face pale with horror. They're going to execute all the prisoners, she said. 12 worlds, billions of lives. They'd rather commit genocide than lose their slaves. Kane read the intercepted messages, feeling her blood turn to ice. The Korthik were planning to murder entire populations just to hurt humanity's feelings. It was evil on a scale that defied understanding. How long do we have? She asked. The orders specify a coordinated execution in 72 hours, Chun replied. They want the humans to receive news of all the deaths at the same time. General. Stone joined them in the briefing room, his face grim. Our fleet is spread across 6 systems. We can't possibly reach all 12 target worlds in time. Kane stared at the star map, calculating distances and travel times. Stone was right. It was impossible. Even if they split their forces to the absolute minimum, they could only reach 4, maybe 5 of the target worlds. There has to be a way, she said. I won't let them murder billions of people just to hurt us. Admiral, Stone said gently. We have to accept that we can't save everyone. The best we can do is save who we can and make the Korthik pay for the rest. Kane slammed her fist on the table. No, we didn't come this far to watch genocide happen because we couldn't move fast. Enough. It was Dr. Chun who provided the answer. What if we don't try to reach all the worlds? What if we go straight to the source? Kane looked at her. Explain. The final protocol requires confirmation from Korthik Prime, if we can reach their homeworld. And force the Emperor to cancel the orders, we can save everyone at once. Stone shook his head. Korthik Prime is the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. They have orbital platforms, defense fleets, and ground installations that have never been penetrated. Then we'll have to be the first, Kane said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. Send orders to all ships? We're going to cut the head off the snake. The decision to attack Korthik Prime directly was the most dangerous gamble in human military history. Kane divided her fleet into 12 task forces, each one racing toward a different slave world. But the largest force, led by Kane herself, headed straight for the heart of the Empire. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the assault ship Vengeance, loaded with 3,000 human marines. His mission was simple in concept, but nearly impossible in execution. Land on Korthak Prime and capture Emperor Vexthal alive. The orbital defenses will try to stop us before we reach the surface, he briefed his troops. If we make it down, we'll face the Imperial Guard, the best soldiers the Korthak have. And if we somehow fight through them, we still have to capture the most dangerous individual in the galaxy. Sergeant Lisa Parker, a veteran of the border wars, raised her hand. Sir, what if the Emperor won't surrender? What if he'd rather die than cancel the orders? Rodriguez smiled grimly. Then we make him understand that death would be the easy choice. While the assault forces prepared, Dr. Chun made a discovery that changed everything. She had been analyzing Korthak communication patterns and found something unexpected. Admiral, she reported to Kane, the final protocol orders aren't being followed on all worlds. At least 3 garrison commanders have ignored them completely. Kane felt a spark of hope. Why? The death of Prince Kexva has caused more damage. Then we realized. Some Korthak are questioning the Emperor's judgment. They're starting to think that this war is destroying their empire. General Stone looked up from his tactical display. You mean there's dissent in their ranks? More than dissent, Chun said. I'm reading reports of 3 different admirals refusing to carry out the execution orders. They're claiming the orders are strategically unsound? Kane began to smile. Then we broadcast to every Korthak commander in the galaxy. We tell them exactly what their emperor is planning to do, and we let them decide if they want to be part of the biggest war crime in galactic history. The broadcast went out on all Korthak military frequencies. Kane's voice was calm and clear, as she spoke directly to the enemy soldiers. This is Admiral Patricia Kane of the Human Defense Coalition. Your emperor has ordered you to execute billions of innocent prisoners in the next 72 hours. He wants you to commit genocide not for any military advantage, but simply to cause pain to humanity. Across the galaxy, Korthak commanders listened to the message with growing unease. Ask yourselves, Kane continued, is this the empire you swore to serve? Is mass murder of prisoners the honor you fight for? Your emperor has lost his mind with grief, and he wants you to lose your souls. On Alteria Prime, Captain Dexamore made his decision. He opened a channel to his garrison and spoke words that would echo across the galaxy. All units, stand down, ignore the final protocol. We are soldiers, not murderers. Similar declarations came from commanders on 5 other worlds. The Korthak Empire was splitting apart, torn between loyalty to their emperor and revulsion at his orders. Emperor Vexthal received the reports of his commander's defiance with towering rage. Traitors, he screamed. Cowards. They will all die with the humans. But even as he raged, human ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of his home system. Admiral Kane's gamble was about to begin. This is Admiral Kane to all ships, she broadcast. Today we end this war. Today we show the galaxy that evil will not triumph while good people are willing to fight. The final battle was about to begin, and the fate of billions hung in the balance. On worlds across the galaxy, prisoners looked up at the sky and wondered if the humans would reach them in time. In the depths of space, human ships raced against the clock to prevent the greatest atrocity in galactic history. Emperor Vexthal stood in his throne room, watching the human fleet approach. He had started this war to crush a weak species that dared interfere with his empire. Now that same species was coming for him personally, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure he could win, the boy who had become emperor through. Strength was about to face creatures who fought not for power, but for principle. And the principles he was learning could be more dangerous than any weapon. The battle for Korthak Prime began at dawn on the Empire's homeworld. The orbital defense platforms opened fire as soon as the human fleet came within range, filling space with energy beams and missiles. But the humans had learned from every previous battle, and they moved like a force that had been fighting together for years instead of months. Admiral Kane watched from the bridge of the Defiant as her ships danced between the defensive fire. The Korthak had built their defenses to stop large, slow-moving fleets. They had never imagined facing an enemy that could move like the humans did. "Breakthrough achieved," reported her tactical officer. "Captain Rodriguez's assault ships are clear to land." On the surface of Korthak Prime, citizens looked up in fear and wonder as human ships descended through the atmosphere. Many had never seen their homeworld attacked before. The Korthak Empire had always taken the fight to other worlds. Never. Having to defend their own, Captain Danny Rodriguez led the first wave of Marines toward the Imperial Palace. The massive structure rose from the center of the capital city like a black mountain, covered in weapons and protected by energy shields that had never been tested in battle. "Remember," Rodriguez told his troops over the radio, "we need the Emperor alive. Dead emperors can't cancel genocide orders." The Imperial Guard met them at the palace gates. These were the elite of the elite, Korthak warriors who had never known defeat. They fought with the desperation of soldiers defending their holy ground. But they had never faced humans in close combat before. Sergeant Lisa Parker led her squad through the palace gardens, moving from cover to cover as Imperial guards tried to stop them. The Korthak were strong and well-armed, but the humans fought with a fury that came from knowing what was at stake. "Every minute we waste here, people die on other worlds," Parker said to her troops. "We don't stop until we reach the throne room." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the race to save the slave worlds continued. On 7 different planets, human ships arrived just in time to stop the executions. But 5 worlds remained beyond their reach, and time was running out on Alteria Prime. Captain Deximur received an angry message from Emperor Vexthal demanding to know why the executions had not begun. Deximur looked at his communications officer and made the choice that would define the rest of his life. "Send a reply," he said. "Tell the Emperor that Captain Deximur refuses to murder prisoners. Tell him that if he wants them dead, he can come here and do it himself." Similar acts of defiance were happening across the Empire. The final protocol had been the Emperor's greatest mistake, because it forced every Korthak commander to choose between following orders and following their conscience. Back on Korthak Prime, the battle was reaching the throne room. Rodriguez and his Marines had fought through 12 levels of the palace, leaving a trail of defeated Imperial guards behind them. But the closer they got to the Emperor, the fiercer the resistance became. "Final corridor," Rodriguez reported as his forces reached the massive doors of the throne room. "Thermal scans show at least 50 guards inside, plus the Emperor himself." General Stone's voice came through the radio from the fleet above. "Danny, you're running out of time. We're getting reports that some worlds are starting the executions." Despite their commander's refusal, Rodriguez looked at the sealed doors that stood between him and the most powerful being in the galaxy. Behind those doors was a creature who had ordered the deaths of billions, who had built an empire on slavery and suffering. "All units, prepare for final assault," Rodriguez ordered. "Whatever happens in there, we don't come out without the Emperor." The throne room doors exploded inward, and human Marines poured through the opening. The Imperial guards fought like demons, but they were outnumbered and surrounded. One by one, they fell to human weapons and determination. At the center of the vast room, Emperor Vexthal sat on his throne of black metal. He was even more massive than the humans had expected, covered in armor that looked like it could stop a tank shell. His red eyes burned with hatred as he watched his elite guards fall. "So," he said, his voice filling the room, "the soft humans have come to face me personally." Rodriguez stepped forward, his rifle aimed at the Emperor's head. "Vexthal, by the authority of the Galactic Alliance and in the name of every innocent life you've destroyed, I place you under arrest." The Emperor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think you can arrest me? I am the ruler of 1,000 worlds. I am the master of 1,000,000 species." "You're a murderer," Rodriguez replied calmly, "and your empire is finished." Vexthal rose from his throne, towering over the humans. "Even if you kill me, my orders will still be carried out. Billions will die, and it will be your fault for interfering." "Cancel the orders," Rodriguez demanded. "Call off the executions and surrender, and you get to live." "Never!" Vexthal roared. "I would rather watch the galaxy burn than bow to creatures like you." The Emperor reached for a weapon, and Rodriguez had to make a choice. He could kill Vexthal easily, but a dead Emperor couldn't cancel orders. Instead, he aimed for the Emperor's legs and fired. Vexthal crashed to the floor, roaring in pain and rage. Human Marines surrounded him, their weapons trained on his head. "Last chance," Rodriguez said. "Cancel the orders, or we'll let you watch your empire collapse from a prison cell." For the first time in his life, Emperor Vexthal felt completely powerless. He was surrounded by enemies, wounded, and watching his empire tear itself apart. The humans had done something no other species had ever managed. They had made him afraid. "The cancellation codes," he said finally, his voice filled with defeat. "They are in the throne computer." Dr. Chun, who had accompanied the assault force, rushed to the Emperor's communications system. Her fingers flew over the controls as she accessed the Imperial Command Network. "Broadcasting cancellation orders now," she reported. "All execution. Commands are being countermanded." Across the galaxy, Korthic commanders received the new orders with relief. On world after world, the executions were called off. Billions of prisoners who had been minutes from death suddenly found themselves saved by humans they had never met on Alteria Prime. Captain Dexamur received the cancellation with a smile. He had made the right choice, and history would remember that not all Korthak had lost their honor. 6 months later, the war was over. The Korthic Empire had been dissolved, its territory divided among the liberated species. War crimes tribunals were held on 17 different worlds, with human judges ensuring that justice was served fairly but firmly. Emperor Vexthal was sentenced to life in prison, forced to watch as his former subjects built new, peaceful governments. Some chose democracy, others formed councils of elders, but all rejected the old ways of conquest and slavery. Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching as the last human transport ships prepared to return to Earth. The war had changed everything. Humanity had revealed itself as the galaxy's protector, the species that would cross the void to defend strangers. General Stone joined her at the window. "So what happens now?" he asked. Kane smiled. "Now we go home, we rebuild. We remember what we learned out here. And if someone else threatens the innocent," Kane's smile became colder, "then they'll learn what the Korthic learned. That humanity doesn't forget, and humanity doesn't forgive those who hurt the helpless." The Zellery homeworld had been completely restored, its crystal city shining brighter than ever before. Elder Luminara, now fully recovered, had become an ambassador to the new Galactic Council. Her first speech to the assembled species would be remembered forever. "The humans came not as conquerors, but as guardians," she said. "They asked for nothing but our freedom. They fought not for territory or wealth, but for the simple principle that innocent beings should not suffer." But perhaps the most important change was in the galaxy itself. The Korthic Empire's defeat had sent a message to every would-be tyrant. Somewhere in the void, human ships were watching. And if you hurt the innocent, humans would find you. 3 years after the war ended, Admiral Kane received a new distress signal in her office. Another species under threat, another call for help from creatures facing extinction at the hands of those stronger than themselves. Kane looked at the message and smiled. She pressed the button for fleet-wide communication. "This is Admiral Kane. To all human vessels. We have received a distress call from the vegan system. A species in need has asked for our help." She paused, thinking of Luminara and all the others they had saved. "We are humanity. We answer." Across human space, ships began launching toward their new mission. The crews were different now, veterans who had learned what it meant to fight. For principle rather than profit. They carried with them the knowledge that they were not just soldiers, but guardians of everything good in the galaxy. The message that went out before them was simple, but powerful. This is the human defense coalition. We have received your call for help. We are coming. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, those who preyed on the weak felt a chill of fear, because they knew that humanity was watching, and humanity never forgot its promises. The galaxy would never be the same. Peace was no longer just a dream, it was a promise, backed by the determination of a species that had learned to fight not for themselves, But for everyone who could not fight back,